Welcome. In this video, I'm going to talk about why we are on social media and what different types of behavior we engage in while we are using social media. Also for this topic is about understanding digital influences and communities, which will be in other videos. So I'm going to start with exploring why people participate at all in social media. And looking at some of our key motives, because that really sets the basis for what we do and our behavior while we're on social media. And from there, we can start looking at a number of different segmentation profiles and then start building consumer profiles for your social media activities, which is what you will be doing in assignment 1 and 2. And finally, then we can look at social media strategies for these different segments. So back in 2011, Heinonen looked at a user gratification approach in order to investigate why people participate in social media. And so basically just dividing it up in two core overarching different types of motives, rational motives and emotional motives to participate. And the rational motives has to do with seeking entertainment, looking for different types of information, sharing knowledge, or otherwise participate in various advocacy activities. Now the emotional motivations, on the other hand, has to do with social connections, looking for community development, expressing yourself, or even actualizing yourself, such as giving back to society, pursuit of knowledge, and that sort of stuff. And from those motives that will, based on a user gratification approach, Heinonen then developed this 3x3 matrix for motivations and then input usage approach to different consumers on social media. So that was then divided up to, as I said, the motivations. So here is just looking at entertainment, social connections, and information seeking, and then dividing that up to into what extent people are consuming content, or whether they're participating in creating content, or whether they are more into actual production of content. So for consumers that are interested in consumption and are looking for information, so that will then, in a marketing sense, will be retrieving product information or content, news or surveillance of information that they're interested in, or collecting various types of factual information while you do research for a future purchase, for example. Those that are into social connections will more be about social surveillance, so looking at what your friends are doing on Facebook, sharing various types of content, and experiencing with others. Those that are motivated by entertainment and consumption will then be about escaping from the real world, relaxing, and just entertaining yourself. For those that are more into participation and looking at entertainment, it's about becoming inspired, managing your moods. If it's about social connections, then it's more about belonging and bonding and being up to date. So we can see that these are different from those that are merely just interested in consumption. When we're talking about information, on the other hand, it's about applying knowledge and sharing and accessing opinions and writing reviews, or writing reviews and various types of ratings. So you're more actively involved and participating there. Some consumers are also driven by production and are interested in producing content. So Heinonen then said that, well, that's then for entertainment purposes, it's about the self-expression, while the social connection is about creating and managing social networks and continue to stay in touch. So we can see that there are large differences of consumers engaging in different types of behavior using social media. And from this, Heinonen then drew up the strategy based on social media marketing strategies based on motivations and usage approaches. So then arguing that for consumers that are merely just want to consume content and are looking for information, then providing that product information in free downloads, for example, and linking company offerings to current happenings, things that are currently happening, is then a good idea. So that's and this obviously will have direct implications for your assignment 1 in particular, where you can use such a framework, figuring out what your consumers are most likely to do. So for those that are into consumption and looking for social connections, then enabling interaction between users, so have a platform that enables that interaction is a very great idea, and creating chat functions, for example, in online communities. Those that are into entertainment will then be about creating games or online content that can be consumed purely for entertainment purposes. And then this sort of goes further up to the more complex behaviors where consumers are into participation and production further over to the other side of the matrix there as well. Now, if that sounded overly theoretical to you and hard to grasp, then there's actually things that we can do just based on the data that's readily available to us. So this from this slide, I'm looking at the data from the yellow census report, which is part of the reading in this course. And I've basically just sort of, in a crude and ugly way, highlighted the different types of behaviors. So this is figures for the number of the following reasons for why people use social media sites. So this is in the census report. I asked why people use social media sites. So these are the most common reasons for why people use social media. And so I took those reasons and I categorized them based on the Heinonen framework. I mean, you may disagree. You can write a blog post about reclassifying it or using another framework to classify, for that matter. But what I found here was that it's first and foremost it's the looking for information, and only like consumption of information seems to be one of the most common behaviors here. So get information and news about current events, follow or find out about particular brands and businesses in general. So these are all have to do with consumption, and all has to do with information. So most of these most common reasons for why Australians use social media falls into the consumption category. It's only a few that goes into production and or even participation. And that tells you a lot about the majority of consumers and what sort of information will most likely be viewed positively by your target audiences. So you stay on the safe side if you produce stuff that's geared towards the consumption side here. I think we can conclude. Now, the yellow social media report is full of useful information for you. So I really recommend that you have a good and long look at that information that's there. It's something that's very useful when creating a social media marketing strategy. So on this slide here, I basically just put up the headings from the report. So some of the information that's on there. I'm not going to go through each page or each chart in the report and then comment on the numbers, but I think that you should do that, and that's something that you could write a blog post about, relating back to theory, because all these things says something about your audiences. So these are data from Australians and how they use social media. So what time of the day are they using social media? and how long do they, how much time do they spend, what do they think of it, what are their opinions about advertising, and how do they feel it impacts their personal life. So there's loads of very rich data there that will be directly useful for you when you create a content strategy and suggests how you want to reach your audiences. Also, with creating a content calendar, there's data here about what time of the day consumers would use social media, for example, which is useful in terms of when you should make your posts. If you want to look at a newer framework than the Heinonen 2011 framework we looked at earlier, here's one from Hodis and colleagues from 2015. So they basically looked at two dimensions. To what extent do people create content, and to what extent do they consume content? And that became then a 2x2 matrix, looking at entertainment chases in the lower quadrant there, where people that falls into that category are typically low in consuming content and also low in creating content. And then you have the attention seekers that are mostly interested in creating but less interested in consumption. Connection seekers are into consumption but not creation. And then you have the devotees that are into both, and that could potentially be your social media influencer there for that you may want to use in your marketing strategy. So based on this, Hodis and colleagues then suggested this strategy for how to target these different types of segments. So if they are low in creation, they'll say your strategy should be to serve and nurture further connections with them. While if they are high in creation, then you should recruit them and empower them to talk more about you. So they, as I suggested before as well, so these are the typical, the attention seekers are the celebrity endorser, while the devotees more are the brand ambassadors that you may want to recruit as an influencer in an influencer marketing strategy. While the entertainment chasers is more about producing games, quizzes, but I would say if you combine this a little bit with the Heinonen framework, it's not just necessarily entertainment, it could also be information. So some people are not interested in entertainment, they're just looking for information, so that should also be taken into account there. While for connection seekers, they want to consume, so they various types of groups, events, things they can participate in would be a good idea for those type of people. Now, if none of those frameworks really tick the box for you, here's an even newer one from 2017. So in this paper, they conducted a survey using the Mechanical Turk, or MTurk online, about 1,000 consumers, I believe, probably mainly Americans. And from there, they will then run a cluster analysis through their statistical package, and then come up with 6 different clusters of behaviors, or you can then say 6 different consumers, or rather segments of consumers. Sorry, I have to interrupt myself there. Instead of me going through all these categories, I recommend that you go and have a look at the paper yourself. The paper is very specific in terms of gender and age and usage patterns of social media. And this is data that you can easily find about your own consumers. And knowing that data will then determine what likelihood that those consumers may, or the likelihood of those consumers to fall into each one of these categories. And as such, you can then look at one of those segments here as a behavioral segment to target for your assignment 1. So super useful. Also good to avoid some of the categories of those consumers that are less likely to engage with you. So this is a great little paper to reflect on in your assignment 1. So I hope to see some references to this framework there. All right, so that's basically all I have for this video. I'm going to just leave you here with the Forrester's social technographics ladder from 2007. So Forrester research came up with this long time ago, and it sort of assumes like there's a ladder of engagement on the internet, where we start with inactives and then end up with those that are creating content on a regular basis. And from the other frameworks that I've talked about today, you can see that it's actually not that different. So it's not that much that has changed. I think what has changed, of course, is the comments out on the side here about the types of behavior that they're looking at, which is mainly just engaging in text-based, publishing blogs, publishing your own website, use RSS feed. Nobody does that anymore. So all those things may have changed, while the going from inactive to creators may not have changed that much. That could be something to write a blog post about as well, how the evolution of Forrester's technographics ladder. For example, I'll leave you with that, and I'll see you back in another video.